As a leader, one of the most important decisions that you will make is who do you promote into your leadership core? Are there some things that you need to look out for? You bet there are. Hello again, everyone. I'm Eli's dad with Project Eli, where we educate, we lead, and we inspire. And I was kind of inspired to have this particular talk. This is kind of an advanced talk because by definition, most people are not leaders. But let's talk about when you become the leader in an organization, how do you promote people and do so with confidence? And one of the things that comes to mind is a book from the 1970s called The Peter Principle, which was written by a gentleman, Lawrence Peters. And essentially it was written initially as a book, as a satire, but it was on the bestseller list for a very, very long time during that period because a lot of it's, many a truth is said in jest, and this happens to be one of those times. What is the Peter Principle? The Peter Principle is that a person will rise in an organization until they reach their level of incompetence. In other words, let's suppose you have somebody in a sales organization that it turns out to be a very, very good salesperson, and you're looking for someone to be a sales manager. Well, the person you look at, you say, well, he or she is a very successful salesperson within our organization. They understand our concepts. They understand, the basics of what it is, how we want to get things accomplished. They would be a good person to promote into a sales management position. Well, what the research found was that's not always the case. The people that are the best salespeople are not always the best sales managers in terms of, inspiring and getting production from the group of people that they're managing. I worked with a company called Copa, one of the very first companies I worked with that actually did things right. Now, they weren't consciously thinking of, how can we avoid the Peter Principle, but they did. And I want to show you exactly how they did it, and you as a leader need to embrace these concepts in order to make sure that the person you're promoting into leadership is going to be the right person. So here goes. We were in let me give you a little description of the company. Copa was an organization that would run an ad in the paper looking for sales management people. All right? So actually the title of the ad was always management trainee. We're looking for people to be managers in our office. We were a growing company, and all this was true. They were. And I answered that blind ad and actually became a divisional vice president in that company. So I kind of know how it works. And let me go over with you the way it was set up by my major mentor, Bob Anderson. And it's a kind of a brilliant system. Okay, it starts off where you come in, you go for the interview, and when you have the interview and you decide, yeah, that's an opportunity I want to pursue, and the company says, yeah, this would be a worthwhile individual that we want to spend time with, okay, we have a meeting of the minds, we start from there. And then you go through the training. And first you start off as a, guess what, trainee, where there was a presentation to make. The product that was being sold was savings and retirement programs, insurance for middle America. Okay, what we used to call the 80% crowd. Now, the way it would work is you would be a trainee and you would be put into a class. And in this class, the first thing you would do would be to learn the presentation. And you would memorize the presentation. You come in and you memorize it. Okay, then they hand you a presentation book. Today they would probably, put it on your laptop computer. But back then it was, here's your presentation book. And we were taught how to say what needed to be said, how to ask the right questions, and so on, and how to point, and how to look up at the client, and how to, have a warm-up, and how to close, and all of those things. And that was during the training period. Okay, you would go through the training period, and you would essentially be role playing. And then once you got your license, because you needed a license for this, then, and you were ready to hit the field, in other words, you knew the presentation, you could do it, then you would go out into the field and you were then a production representative. Now, as a production representative, you didn't go out on your own, you went out with someone that was a field support leader. What is a field support leader? A field support leader was somebody that was formerly a production representative, had reached a certain amount of sales, and by doing so had qualified to become a field support leader. So the theory was, if he or she can go out and sell a product, then they're in a position where they can watch other people go out, team up with them in the field, help them out so that they can be a productive salesperson as well. Okay, are we making sense so far? All right, so as a field support leader, you were in charge of one or two individuals that you went out in the field with, and once they reached a level of production, then you would advance to the next level. Now remember, keep in mind that the bottom line here, the ad that you answered was for a management trainee position. So the idea is to become the manager of your own office. Now it's a sales office, so essentially you're a sales manager. And as a field support leader, you took one or two people and you had a track record of, hey, he or she went out in the field with them, made them competent enough where they could go out in the field on their own, and then when they wrote enough business, they became a field support leader. You follow how it's going. So each step that you took to become the manager had you had to do this much to achieve this, and then when you achieved that, you got a new title and you were doing this. So each step of the way you were doing different things. So the first thing, obviously, in a sales organization is you got to know how to sell. So you start as a trainee, then you're a production representative, and then once you sell a certain amount, you become a field support leader. And as a field support leader, you are managing one or two people in the field, and by doing so, they produce a certain amount, so you have shown the capability of getting other people to perform. Isn't that kind of what leadership's all about? It is, all right, getting other people to perform. So you were then a field support leader. So then once you did that, then the next step was what's called a unit production manager. What was a unit production manager? Well, that was the step right below manager. And as a unit production manager, you started to perform the functions of a manager, which included, recruiting people, training people, attract, train, and motivate. That's what it was. It was attract, train, and motivate. So the first thing you had to do was be able to, when we put the ad in the paper, and you would answer the phone and draw people to come in. And then when they came in, you would meet and greet them, and then you would perform the presentation that, conducting the interview to decide whether there was a fit between you and the person coming in for the job. All right? So you have, excuse me. So once again, you're doing the little steps that are required to become a manager. First, you have to sell. Then you have to teach other people how to sell. Then you have to attract, train, and motivate. So you had a group of people under you. You had the field support leaders under you that you were teaching, and then the field support leaders had the trainees, had the production reps under them. You follow, and then you also, as the field support leader, were the teacher, were the person that was doing the training of the trainees when they came in. So you were performing the different functions of a manager. And then what the manager would do is the idea in manager was to produce other managers as well as make your office productive. All right, so it was a twofold thing. And as a unit production manager, then you also had to learn how to do the paperwork that's involved with running an office. How do you submit sales to the home office? We had a follow-up system where when somebody made a sale, we would always, the next night or a night or two down the road, call the client back and say, hi, I'm with Copa, and I know Joey was out to see you, and you became happily involved with our savings and retirement program, and I just wanted to make sure that you didn't have any questions after Joey left. So it was kind of a checkup call to make sure that they didn't have buyer's remorse, for one thing, and also, of course, to answer any questions. So these are all of the different things that you're doing. To become a manager, you have to be able to master these skills. And then as a manager, your job was to be able to produce, as of course, once again, have production in your office. We had a minimum of, you had to have $10,000 of annualized premium every week. That was the absolute minimum. But you did that. But in addition to that, you were also developing other people. You were recreating yourself, essentially, and developing people for management so that the company could expand and grow. Very simple. And actually not so simple, all right? And you work with the trials, the errors, and so on of all the people in your office, but you also had to be able to, once somebody was given, you delegated a particular assignment, you had to be able to let the person do that, but at the same time, inspect to expect and expect to inspect. Be very clear on what it is you want, and inspect to make sure things were going along the right way. And if they weren't, then you had to step in and make some changes. What could you do? How can we improve? So on and so forth. All right. Now, as the manager, then what you're doing is you're promoting people, you're developing people for leadership, for management, for other offices. And of course, when you promote someone to another office, that leaves a void in your office, doesn't it? So you always have to have the pipeline filled with more people coming in, more leaders that you're developing leaders in training. And then as a manager, once your office reached a certain plateau of business, you reached and it was a pretty fair amount of business that you had to reach. It took me 2.5 years, 3 years to reach that. Once you reach that, then they said, okay, he or she is producing the production that we want as a company. And production not only meant producing business, but it also meant producing leaders. That was the key, producing leaders. All right. And so once you had become a manager yourself, and your office reached a certain level of production, and you had produced other leaders, there was, you had to do this to get this. And then once you reached all that, then you were promoted to divisional vice president. And divisional vice president was the manager of a number of different offices. Okay, as an example, I started in the San Jose office, and then I, went up the ladder and became a manager in San Diego. And then my San Diego office, I developed and promoted 4 or 5 different people into management, and my office reached a level, and then I was up for divisional vice president. But since I was in an area where there already was a divisional vice president, I had to go to another area. So from California, from Southern California, I moved to the Midwest, and I became the divisional vice president of the Detroit and Indianapolis offices. Okay, so at first I was managing in Detroit, and Indianapolis was my side office that I worked with the manager there, and we would travel back and forth and go back and make sure things were going good in developing that manager and inspecting and expecting. And then I developed somebody that I really liked in Detroit and put her in charge of the Detroit office, and wasn't so happy with the person in Indianapolis, so I went down to Indianapolis, became the manager there, and started doing the process all over again, and got that office up and running to an acceptable level, more than an acceptable level, and started developing people there. So what does this have to do with, once again, the Peter Principle? The Peter Principle is that you promote people to their level of incompetence. What was good about this company was all along the way, in order to reach the next level, you had to perform the skills in leadership, in sales, that were necessary to put you up there, so that when somebody got promoted to manager, they were pretty solid as far as a manager was concerned, because of the different steps they had to take. Now, in today's times, what happens is, once again, a lot of times somebody is very good in a particular area and they get promoted to the next area, assuming that they're going to be effective as a manager as in charge of other people. Well, you see that that doesn't work, and there's so many different places that you see that. As an example, you often will see people that were, just to use a sports analogy, that were very, very good, either basketball players or quarterbacks, as an example. All right, what comes to mind is there was a tremendously outstanding outstanding basketball player, two that I can think of actually. One was Bill Russell, who is my all-time favorite winner, athlete, Boston Celtics, and Oscar Robertson, who was the king of the triple-double. And these guys were outstanding basketball players, and when they retired, of course, the network said, hey, would you like to come on board and be the color analyst for us? Well, when they came on board, they were very good basketball players, but just because they were good basketball players didn't mean that they were going to be good announcers. And that turned out to be the case. All right, especially when I remember Oscar Robertson, like the major announcer would say something like, boy, he sure is a good rebounder. He can get that ball off the board better than anybody. And Oscar Robertson would say, yes, he can. Yes, he can. All right, and there was very little, exciting color commentary that came, and these guys lasted a year or two on TV, and then they were gone because it was obvious that they didn't have the skill set to perform that function. So people can rise to a level of incompetence, and not just in sports, but they do that in the workplace. Somebody can be an outstanding school teacher, and then they get promoted to assistant principal, all right? And then from there they get promoted to principal. Well, just because they were a good teacher and just because maybe they were able to be a good assistant principal doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be a good, outstanding principal. And that, as a matter of fact, was the example that Dr. Peters gave in his book for people going in the Peter Principle. So how do you overcome that? You overcome that by having, as we did with COPA, a step-by-step structure where you have to perform a particular function at the next level before you can advance. And there's always something new to go for. And as the company grew, the individuals would grow. It was an outstandingly productive system for that company that I worked with. That grew to like 25 or 30 offices nationwide. So keep in mind the Peter Principle as a leader, that you're always training people, that you always have people in the pipeline. If you're going to promote somebody, you're going to need to put somebody in their place when they leave. You have to have a pipeline of people that you're developing for leadership. Leadership is everything, and you as the leader are looking to replace yourself with somebody else so that you can move up to the next level, which may be becoming a creative person within the company, coming up with new concepts, new ideas, new paradigms. All right? Those are the things that we look for in leadership. And remember always, don't ration the passion, fashion the passion. I'm Eli's dad.